everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Miraculous Thinking. I'm your host, Elenique Marie, and with me, my super embodied and very grounded co-host, Crystal Ann Compton. And I'm excited today. We're going to talk about the gene keys, your gene keys, in particular, your genius, your zone of genius, your genius sequence.
It's a big zone. It's a big wide zone.
I don't know if we're going to be able to cover it all.
It's a planetary zone.
Yeah, it could take lifetimes to explore. But we want to thank you for being here today. And just before we begin, before we dive in, I want to remind you what we're going to be doing in the upcoming month in April. So our next book is The Search for Truth by Michael Singer, and we're going to be covering that the first 2 weeks of April, followed by Illusions by Richard Bach for the last 2 weeks of April. So we are super excited to explore those with you as well. But today, it's all about the Gene Keys Part 2. So anything I missed, Crystal? Anything you want to say before we begin?
The only thing I want to say is just to remind everybody that we have a YouTube channel. Please like, comment, subscribe. Also leave us a good review if you can. It will really help us to grow as a community. And we've got some good things coming up this year for the Miraculous Thinking community. We have a Facebook community. All you have to do is search for us or look at the link in the description. You can join. Anybody can join. You can also reach out and talk to us by writing to us at miraculousthinking@gmail.com. That is miraculousthinking@gmail.com. We read every email and we would love to hear from you. That's all. Just want to say that.
Absolutely. Great. Well, and especially with this gene key section that we're going to be exploring today, it would be really great if any of you, because what we're going to do today, we're going to talk a little bit, just refresh everyone about what are the gene keys, and then we're going to go through an aspect of the gene keys, which is called the activation sequence, which is the gene keys are divided into sort of 3 journeys or 3 sequences. And today we're going to be exploring the first one called the activation sequence or the genius sequence. But we would love to hear from you to let us know, did you begin to explore your sequence, your activation sequence? What came up for you? Did you suddenly realize that you had a lot of shadow present for you? Like, where are you sitting in that experience? Because I know for me, when I started looking at it, I was like, yes. Like, once I realized what my shadow was, I was like, wow, I am hanging out a lot in this shadow. And just that awareness helped me to disassociate a little bit from just being automatically in that place. And that's what he says happens, is that as we become aware of what's really there, as opposed to ignoring it or dissociating from it, we begin to bring light to it. And by bringing that light, we begin to activate a sequence of change and of owning and healing that shadow. So we would love to hear from you if you're having a similar experience to that as well.
100%. I pulled my gene key chart. I shared it with you. And what we're going to do today is have a look at my chart. So if you are listening on audio, you might want to go to our YouTube channel, link in the description. We typically release the video version of our audio podcast the following Monday on YouTube. But if you watch along on YouTube, you'll actually be able to see my chart as Elenique goes into it and highlights certain areas. But let me share the screen. Should we do that now, do you think? Okay,
sure.
let me do that. Hold on. Okay, so can you see it?
I can.
Okay, do you want me to, so this says obviously gene keys, my hologenetic profile, it has my name. And it lists below it 3 things, which you had discussed last week, which first being genius.
Yes.
So this chart or this information is going to talk to me about my particular genius.
Yes.
I love talking about that. Also love, right? And relationships, and then prosperity. And so I'm super interested to go into it. Do you want to start here? Do you want to start here?
And before that, I wanted to give them, so this is good where you have it right now.
Okay.
But the thing that I wanted to say about gene keys is that Richard Rudd, he says that the primary purpose of life itself is to live well. right? He says that it's not really, when we see this word life's work or purpose, we have this idea of like this thing that we have to do external to ourselves in order to be self-realized or to accomplish a goal. But he said, purpose is not really about what you're here to do as much as how you're doing it, who you're being as you're doing what you do. So I think that that's a huge
Okay.
foundational thing that people need to understand when they're looking at the gene keys. You're not looking at you need to be a nurse, and you need to
Mm.
be a firefighter. This is really a much deeper level. And purpose, there's in life's work, we have the life work that we're meant to do external to ourselves, but there's also the life work that we're meant to do within ourselves. So
Yes.
those are two types of life work. And I think that I just wanted to mention that here at the onset. And also, he says that the purpose of life is to learn from our mistakes. That is the whole purpose of it. It's to have these experiences, make these mistakes, own the mistakes, and own them without blaming anyone else. To fully say, these are my mistakes. That's okay. Let me take the gift from that. And let me not blame any person, situation, or thing for that. And so that's where that is, because as you can see, we begin at the top with life's work, and then we're
Hmm.
going towards our evolution. And in between those pathways, it's not written there on your screen, but that line that connects them is called the challenge. That first line that goes from the top, number 23, life's work, to the number 43, evolution. That line is your challenge.
So the thing I'm
Because
going to have to work on in my life, like an overarching theme of challenge?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, and forever, right? And so it doesn't go away. It's not like, oh, I finished my challenge. The challenge is something, that evolution is what continuously presents itself in new and different ways as we grow. We just keep peeling it, peeling that challenge and refining it, even at the most subtle levels of being. So
Okay.
this is a thing that you need to make friends with. It's not this idea that I want to heal the whole shadow, throw it away, and that's it, and the challenge is gone. We all have this idea. And that's what he says. He said, human nature is to grow. Human nature is change. So your purpose is not a destination. It's
Hmm.
not a here and now I got there and now I'm done. It's a process. And so it evolves as you evolve. And as we evolve, we're coming more and more into alignment with the highest expression of our potential humanity. Right. And as we do that, we hit a new wall, and we hit that new wall, and we grow past that wall, and we evolve to the next level of our being. And so that's what I find so incredible about this, because it's endless. It doesn't end.
May I
You
ask a
could,
question?
yes, of course.
So this line from life's work to evolution is my
Mm-hmm.
lifetime challenge. Is
Mm-hmm.
this next line from evolution to radiance also indicative of a challenge, or is that
That
different?
is called breakthrough. So that
Okay.
line is called
Hmm.
your breakthrough. And then from radiance to purpose, that line is
Yes.
called core stability. So
Okay.
each one of these, and that's so beautiful that you brought it up, because as you can see, it's moving like a sequence. From life's work to my evolution, there's challenge. When I finally get or realize my evolution, I move across. As I have the breakthrough, I step into my radiance. Radiance is another word and radiance has a lot to do with the physical body, with your
Hmm.
aura, with your health. And so you will not be able to reflect that health and glow and best expression of your physicality if you don't deal with your challenge, the challenge of your evolution, and that entire tension. Because 23 and 43, your life's work and your evolution, are what we call programming partners. They're polar opposites to each other. So that's where the tension is coming from.
Hmm.
So you cannot complete your life's work if you don't evolve into the highest expression of yourself. And so they're kind of like pulling at one another. They're opposites. 23 and 43 are opposites. And radiance and purpose are also programming partners,
Okay.
49 and 4. And they play with the duality, the duality of our
Hmm.
being. So this is a sequence that he says you need to begin here. This is another thing. So some people are like, no, I want to start with the love sequence, or I want to start
Right.
with the No, this really is a sequential awakening, the same way as the human body. When the DNA is, when the body's creating a protein, there's a sequence. He compares it to a bank vault. You remember those vaults that you had to put a certain kind of number in a certain
Yeah.
sequence and then it'll open? This is that same thing in your DNA. This
Okay.
is the awakening of the knowledge and wisdom that resides within you, that is already there. You're not going to create some better version of yourself. You're going to uncover the version that was always there by activating these strands through these very specific sequences.
Okay. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so first line challenge, second line is breakthrough, and I'm sorry, the third
Breakthrough,
line again?
core stability.
Core stability. Can you define
Mhm.
what core stability is? I mean,
Integrity.
okay.
It's like being in integrity. It's like being completely in integrity with your shadow, with your gift, with your life's work, with your body, with your aura, all of it. And
Okay.
because it so that brings you to a place of being stable and integral.
Okay. By the way, let me just cut in here and say I pulled
Mm-hmm.
this chart for myself for free
Mm-hmm.
just by going to
Mm-hmm.
genekeys.com,
Absolutely.
which I know we told
Mm-hmm.
you guys about last week, and hopefully you've pulled your chart. But if you haven't, if you're just picking up with us now, genekeys.com, you can pull your chart. You have to know your date of birth, time of birth, and location, kind of like when you pull your
Mm-hmm.
astrological chart as well. And that's how you get all this information. Can I ask you another question? I don't want to detour you, but
Absolutely.
I'm just looking
No.
at this screen here and I'm
Yes.
seeing beneath this kind of
Mm-hmm.
chart,
Mm-hmm.
it says full profile activation and then
Mm-hmm.
Venus and Pearl. So,
Yes.
can you define what these things are, especially the Venus and Pearl?
Is this a screenshot or is this your active link
This
here?
is my active link. Yeah.
Okay, click on full profile. If you click on full profile, this is your entire sequence, everything, the 11, spheres of your entire life. And as you see, some of them are part of more than one sequence. For example, vocation belongs both to the Pearl sequence and it belongs to the Venus sequence. You see how it's half blue,
Mm-hmm.
half red?
Yes.
And life's work has also belongs to a couple of things. It belongs to activation, and it also belongs to Pearl. So let me begin at the beginning. The number one at the top of this, life's work. You see that it says 23.1?
Yes.
23, I should say that the activation sequence, the 23.1, the 43.1, the 49.3, and the 4.3, which
Mm-hmm.
create almost like a cross, those are the same as the incarnation cross in
Okay.
traditional human design.
Okay.
So that top number 23 is your conscious sun. Your conscious sun is in gate 23.
Okay.
Your evolution is your conscious earth. And that's why they're pulling at each other. You see, the sun is pulling you towards, it's an expression of your light, and the earth is pulling you towards your physicality. So you can almost see it as soul and body, and they're
Okay.
both kind of pulling at each other because when you're born, the sun is here and the earth is here, right? They're opposite one another.
Yeah.
49 in radiance is your unconscious sun, and your 4.3 is your unconscious earth. And these are very important because if we don't actualize the unconscious aspects of ourselves, which really have a lot of the gifts that we need to put into action the full expression of our conscious potential. So this
Mm-hmm.
is why this is a dance. So this is what we call in human design the incarnation cross.
Okay.
And in Gene Keys, he calls it the activation sequence.
Okay. So let's move over to activation, which we were
Mhm.
on originally. So what does that mean, activation?
So, activation is really what the word says. This is where you begin. This is where you begin the turning on process to activate the DNA strands, the sequence of letting your body, mind, and spirit know we're on the path now. We're turning on. We're starting to turn this on.
Okay.
And that's why this is fundamental to everything else. If you don't have this, you can't go on to the next ones, because he says in the book, and I'm going to tell you right now, just he says a little quote. He says there's 3 questions that we have to ask in our lives, and that is, what is my purpose, which is answered by this sequence, the activation sequence. What are my relationships? How can I find love in the world? How am I meant to, relate to others? That's the Venus. And then Pearl is really about abundance and really manifesting for yourself,
Okay.
co-creating with the divine. And all of us, those are the 3 primal questions that we all want to know. Like, who am I and what am I here to do? Who am I here to connect with? And ultimately, what am I here to create, and put out into the world?
I
So
see.
each one
Okay.
of these sequences answers one of those questions.
Okay. And so this Venus, this is my relationship stuff,
Correct.
love stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my Pearl is what is it again?
Prosperity.
Prosperity, money,
Prosperity.
money and honey.
Money,
Okay.
abundance, and also, prosperity has to do even with health indirectly. We can be prosperous in having good health.
Right.
So all these things, they're separate, and yet they're connected, and that's what I love about it, because ultimately, you see, for wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
all of these need to be balanced.
Okay. So fascinating. And you just really get
Yeah.
a sense of how much information about yourself you can dive into by
Oh,
looking at your gene keys.
it is. And that's what he says. He says, this is really about contemplating, who am I? And just by looking at something so simple, I mean, this activation sequence, you could spend years on it.
Mm-hmm.
You could spend years just on these 4 spheres. And the way we're looking at it, where we're only looking at the sphere and the line or the pathway that connects, is one way to explore it. But you can also look at it from the point of view of the sphere and the line number. In the previous chart, full profile, you showed me 23.1.
Yes.
That means that gate 23 is being expressed through the line 1 energy.
Okay.
Line 1 energy is the investigator. So that's going to have a very different flavor than someone that has line 23 martyr energy, or
Mm-hmm.
line 23 role model energy. It's the same gate, but it's nuanced. And that's what's so incredible, because gene keys and human design are the art of differentiation. It's really, he says, look, the gene keys, the 64 gene keys, they are the map, the complete map. Your hologenetic profile is your compass. It's the compass that helps you navigate that map. And the pathways are the journey that you're going to take along that map with that compass to get to your final, your final destination, your final activation, which is never final.
Right.
You know,
Wow.
isn't
Okay.
that deep? It's
It is
so
deep.
beautiful. It's so beautiful. And that's why I love it, because you can never get bored of it. And in every moment of your life, like, for example, let's take your first one, if that's okay. If we can take
Sure.
life's work,
Of course.
23.1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in Gene Key 23 is called the alchemy of simplicity. Okay. So this is life purpose. This is a very important for you. This is your conscious sun. So the shadow of simplicity is complexity.
Mm-hmm.
The gift is simplicity, but if you take it to its maximum expression, like what you're really, really here to give humanity, is what he calls quintessence, something far beyond simplicity, something so profoundly beyond communication, just this ease with people, where there is just, it goes beyond speech, beyond talking, beyond all of it. It's just effortless communication, effortless ease. So the bulk of us right now in this world are in the shadow of that gate. And how does that shadow show up? It shows up by misunderstandings between people,
Mm.
by being convinced that you're right about something. And because you are so convinced that you're right, you can't hear what the other person is saying. You block yourself to like listening. And actually, how many of the wars that we're seeing right now are not based on that misunderstanding and lack of communication, right? So it says the challenge with, and so your 23 life's work has a challenge. on the other side, which is
Mm-hmm.
gate 43, right?
Mm-hmm.
So gate 43, I'm gonna tell you right now, is, I marked all of these for you, is breakthrough, right? So the shadow of it is deafness. So if I have a problem that I'm overcomplicating things, if I'm overcomplicating a situation, I'm not listening properly, what I've become essentially is deaf. Deaf to a way of coming to common ground, deaf of giving the benefit of the doubt. So you see how these two things, if I can't cure my deafness, which is the gene key number 43's shadow, and turn it into the gift, which is insight. So we can be turned off to something or someone, right? You see how it says there, epiphany,
Yeah.
insight, deafness right next to it?
Mm-hmm.
So what you have there is, if I am stuck in deafness, into blocking and not being open to hearing and listening to what people, situations, events, or even life itself is trying to show me, I cannot reach insight. I need to let the data in, but how many of us don't have these blinders on, right? About what we think reality is and how things have to happen and where the relevant information is coming from or what's important or what's not important. And so we've got these filters that are making us deaf and blind to the information that's coming in to help us evolve. We're trying to evolve, but we're blocking that evolution. If we can let it in, then we can have insight. We can have insight into ourselves. We can have insight into others. We can have flowing communication. And once we have that, then we can transform what was complex, which is our life's work. We can move from making things overly complicated and step into simplicity. The simplicity that's there when everyone is just open and allowing for direct communication. So, what you're here to do for people, you're here to help them overcome the limitations of their mindset, the limitations of the pain of their past, the things that they are still carrying with them that are holding them back, beliefs about their body, about themselves, about everything, and change the perception that they're having on those things, reinterpret them so that those things now become gifts. Those things are now portals for insight. And with that, your life work will allow them to go from the complexity and brokenness and tightness of feeling constricted and alone to truly stepping into the simplicity of ease, of being their authentic selves, and of just living life in its best expression. As we always say, truth is simple, beauty is simple. Einstein always used to say it, right? Elegant solutions. The best solution is the most simple solution. We overcomplicate life.
Right.
People overcomplicate life. So that is your life work, which, I mean, God, I can see in everything that you do. You take complicated things and you make it simple for people,
Interesting.
right?
Now, when you first pulled your gene keys, did you
Mhm.
try to determine for yourself where in the gateway you were? Like, are you in your shadow? Are you in your gift? Or are you in
Oh,
your
yeah,
your city?
absolutely.
Does everybody do that?
Absolutely.
Because I'm thinking to myself, I don't find myself to be entirely deaf, and I don't find myself.
Yeah.
I can see how I complicate things for myself, but I mean, so I'm like
Hmm.
trying to gauge where I'm at with
Exactly.
these gates. So,
You
okay.
know, that's the incredible thing about it. Because it's a contemplation, that is what you're meant to do with it. You're supposed to sit and
Okay.
then notice, like, right now you have this perception, I really don't see deafness showing up in my life in a significant way. Okay, then maybe next week something happens, but now you're
Hmm.
aware and you say, am I really listening? And somebody might say to you, why aren't you listening to me? Or can't you hear what I'm saying? Or give me a minute to explain. And you check your and you go, oh wow, this
Hmm.
is here.
There
Okay,
it is.
wait. There you are, little shadow. Nice,
Hmm.
nice. So this is why this is beautiful, because it becomes this whispering invitation to awaken to the places where that shadow is so confident and comfortable that we don't even see it anymore as a shadow.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So it's when I started noticing mine, I was like, oh my God, it's everywhere. You know what I mean? It's everywhere.
Interesting,
No.
interesting. Okay, okay. So should we move on over to 49.3 or do we want to stay into
Yes,
radiance? Okay.
into radiance. The one thing I wanted to say though, before we go on with this
Mm-hmm.
actual reading, is that in Gene Keys, he says in the I Ching, there's it says that we are born with an eye. In the arc of our being, there is an eye, a physical, like an eye, not like this, but an eye that sees. That eye is called the fire eye.
Mm.
The fire eye is what generates within us all our dreams, all our passions, all our desires, everything that we create comes from the fire eye.
Oh, I
All
like
the,
it.
yeah, right? It's
Yeah,
like
it's good.
exciting. And the fire eye allows our, if we're looking at life through the fire eye, then we have passion, we have excitement, we have, all these things, these ideas and these projects. In fact, the fact that we're reading the Gene Key book, it's the fire eye that has brought us here.
Mm.
The fire eye is what makes you wonder, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? And it's so powerful. All of humanity, everything that's ever been created comes from the fire eye.
Okay.
But it has one terrible flaw.
Of course it does.
Because, because it's duality.
Right.
And the flaw is that it's self-obsessed.
Mm.
So it's just obsessed with itself, with creating, with doing, with the future, with the past, it's just not ever in the present moment. It cannot be in the present moment. And that's why it's called the fire eye. But inside of you simultaneously is also the water eye. And this fire eye is born with you and it dies with you. And so does the water eye. It is born with you and it dies with you. But the water eye is not interested in any of this. The water eye is always in the present moment. The water eye is ease. It doesn't reach, it doesn't do, it's completely uninterested in human affairs at all. Doesn't care. And so, what you're trying to do with the gene keys, what he's trying to give us, and with the hologenetic profile, is a way of creating alchemy between the fire eye and the water eye, letting the fire float underneath the water so we can enter into a state of balance, a state between creating and being. When we allow that water eye to flow through us and we look through the water eye, the whole world sees through us. When we are with that water eye, all of life flows to us. And then riding that water, having the fire of the creativity, of the dream, of the wish to expand and evolve, but using that water as the source for that drive, instead of getting lost in the reaching and the grasping, then you've got equilibrium. And in that equilibrium is where we find ourselves to be fully embodied. And that's just the beginning of the journey.
So that feels like it has like a polarity assignment, like a male and a female kind of an attribute, the female being the water eye and the male being the fire eye. So it has to be integrated.
Yes, just like we've seen in
Balanced.
almost every single thing that you and I have studied.
Yes.
We have this yin yang, conscious, unconscious, all of it. There's that because it's a world of duality.
Yes.
The physical world is a world of duality. And what I found incredible when he talked about the gene keys and why, to me, they're so incredible is because he says, people doubt in astrology, right? They're like, what the heck does the sun have to do with, who I am or the moon or Jupiter or whatever? He said, it's a holographic world. We're all in a matrix and things are not separate from each other. It's not that the sun is impacting you. It's not that the sun, you and the sun are one thing. It has energy, and you are at that moment when you were born, certain things were in space-time, were at a specific location. That space-time coordinate of your birth means that certain frequencies were being emitted at that time. And you, as a physical expression, an emergent physical expression of human life, are connected to those things that were in the sky at that time, which is not even real, right? Which is a holographic. I mean, it's a universe of thought, right? All is mind. But this is what I found so incredible that he says, what I find strange is that people would doubt that we are affected by what is all around us. We are not separate from that which is around us. We are that which is around us. So this is very deep. This is the thing that I find so incredible about this. It goes far beyond what am I here to do, whatever. I mean, this is an exploration of life itself
Yeah.
and our role in that. So I just,
Wow.
I love it.
Wow. All right. So let me ask you a question. We have, 43.1, we have 49.3. Is
Mm-hmm.
1 always investigator, 3 always martyr, these numbers? Because we discussed this when we talked about human design back in December, right?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
they're pretty consistent. And in his book, this book that you can buy as well, this is his little book. So we have the big book that you'll need to do this exploration, the big gene keys, that has the 64 gene keys listed with their shadow, their gift, and their city. And then you have this little book, which this one is just the one on the activation of the genius sequence. So in that little book, in the back, you'll see that he goes through the 6 lines of each of those things. So for example, life's work, in your life's work, he shows that if you have a line, I'm telling you right now what that line. So he says, so you have line 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it says the first line of each gene key really expresses the inner essence of the archetype that it contains. And we are here to be creative. So our life's work is essentially a creative work process. When we finish our life's work and return to the void, someone else steps in to continue our work. Isn't that a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
way to think about it? Whatever it may be. And so the chain of creative evolution continues. If you have a first line as your life's work, then you are here to create something new. It has to be your idea. It
Hmm.
has to be something that emerges from deep inside you. You can ride on the shoulders of other creators who have come before you, but still, your version must be an original. When you apply this
Hmm.
line to your life's work gene key, you need to consider that gene key at a very deep level. Your contemplation must take you right to the bottom of the well. There
Hmm.
is a great depth in you wanting to find expression in the world. You may need a lot of courage and patience to find and express yourself fully in your work. Whatever you do, it must have the vital creative element within it. Otherwise, you will never be able to feel fulfilled in your life.
Okay. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's very different from a line 2. For example, had you had the line 2, it would say that 2 carries a feeling of fluidity. And so if you have a 2 line in your life's work, then you'll have to find out the gifts in life that come to you naturally and easily. So that's a completely different
Yeah.
exploration of that gate. So this is why I find the numbers, which a lot of people ignore. They're just like, oh, my conscious sun is in, gate 23. Yeah. But what aspect of that are we looking at?
Right.
So
Changes
it's
everything. It doesn't change it, it
absolutely,
just deepens it. So much
completely.
information
So
based on a
much. This is what
line.
I'm telling you. I don't even know. Like I could spend when I do readings, especially when I do these kind of readings for people, like I just do 2 hours because
Yeah, I
like
can see.
you have to talk
It would
about it,
be so, so comprehensive. I noticed here that I have predominantly 1s and 3s. I've got 1
Mhm.
6, but everything else
I noticed that.
is that normal?
Everything and anything is normal, but what that tells you a lot is that in all of your paths there's going to be this drive for originality, for your own voice, your own research, your own experience. It's a very interpersonal line, the 1, and so is the 3. 3 is also interpersonal. 3 is martyr energy, right? So I've got to do it, and I might get it right or I might get it wrong, but that's my process for learning, and I can't learn from you. Your mom could have told you 50 times don't do it, but you need to do it and hit yourself in the head, and you're like, oh, okay, now I got it. So that's your path. That's how you're designed to move through the world. And even the 6 that you have
Mhm.
operates as a line 3 for the first 30 years of your life. So even that, you could see it as an extension of 3-line energy. So most of it is 3s and 1s. You're
Yeah,
right. A lot of 3s. Yeah.
a lot of 3s. Can you very quickly run us through 1 through 6 again? So 1 is the investigator, and can you also give us Karen Curry Parker's, how she
Sure.
assigns those lines? Because I know it's a little bit softer
She calls it
for the
softer things, but ultimately, yeah, the experimenter, she calls it like so. So for example, line 1, um, is the investigator. I think that's fair, you know, and I don't think it's a negative spin on anything. Line twos are the hermits. Okay. They're people that need to go very much within. They need to pull away from the world, and have really time to process things on their own. And they will be called out for that wisdom eventually, but they need time with people and time away from people. So if you have a gate that's operating under line two energy, there's going to be some inner work, some work that you're going to have to do on your own that nobody else can help you with. The line three energy is the martyr energy. So, for example, in any of these where you have three, like in your radiance, it means that this is going to be a gate that you're going to work through trial and error, trying, getting it wrong. That didn't work, do this. So that's okay. And you can hold a lot of grace for yourself if you notice that you're struggling often with that particular gate, because you're like, that's how I'm meant to master it, through that trial and error. And to help others understand how not to do it, the ones that can take the wisdom from you, because they're not line threes, right? So you can give your wisdom to line four, line five, lines, you know what I mean? We can receive that from you. And then, so I'll read you one, for example. He says here, like line four, in the case of line fours, it's called he calls it the server. And that comes from the I-ching. And it says, this is really that person that's the foundation for others, the stability, the stabilizer. So our society is extremely needs these line fours to like hold the foundation for the rest of us. And it says here that they have an incredible capacity for conviction, right? So when they believe in something, they are going to hold that thing down, you know, come hell or high water. So that would be a line four energy. Line five are the martyrs, or what we call the fixer. Not the martyr. The martyr is number three. It's the heretic.
The heretic.
The heretic. Right. And the poor heretics, I feel so bad for them, because people, they're a projected line. So people project all of their BS onto the heretics. They're teachers. They're here to teach, but people see what they want to see, and they project what they want to project onto those people. So they either put you up on a pedestal and make you a savior, or they put you down at the bottom of the heap like a devil. And it really has nothing to do with who you are or who you're being. It's just their own, you act as sort of a screen for people to project whatever they want to project. And then the line six energy is the role model, which is the person that begins life as a line three, making a ton of mistakes. Then between 30 and 50 goes on what's called the roof, which is kind of like healing your wounds and processing and synthesizing all the learnings that you've had. And then really evolving and coming back into the world as a source of inspiration for others, not by what you do, but by who you are. And so in a line like that, were you to have a sixth line, like you have that in your IQ, so that would express as you having to be an example of that for others, rather than intellectualizing it, rather than teaching it. This is you would be the conduit for that energy.
Okay. All right. So those are lines 1 through 6. Let's move now from evolution. We'll go back to just activation, evolution, to radiance. And the through line here again is breakthrough, correct?
Breakthrough. That's
and we can see here that my radiance is gate 49, but when you do the full profile, it's 49.3, which you just said, 49.3 with a martyr flavor.
Right. With the, I'm going to do it. And then, and so the 49th key, the gene key, is called changing the world from the inside. Okay. So that's gene key 49. The shadow of that key is reaction, being reactive to things. And the gift is revolution. And so he says here, in the 49th shadow, we find the sleeping genetic trigger for the process that begins our collective ascent to higher consciousness. In the greater percentage of human beings, this trigger is dormant, ensuring that the frequency passing through our genetics remains consistent and stable. In other words, asleep. In order for a human being to awaken to a higher reality, this trigger or switch lying in the 49th shadow must be activated. When this occurs, the first stages of evolution begin inside you as an acute change in your emotional patterns. As we look further into the 49 gene key, we will examine this early awakening process in more depth. But before we can journey to that point, we must first understand what it is that keeps us from evolving and how widespread this phenomenon is. And so basically, the shadow of reaction is one of the most powerful ones that is keeping us from evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Because unless there is some glimmer of awareness in the shadow, your raw emotions will absolutely rule your life and the decisions that shape your life. So in this particular
Mm-hmm.
case, we have this possibly this inbuilt mechanism of reacting
Yes.
to things, and with the martyr energy, which is reacting to things. And even though you've done that 10 times, you're going to continue to do that same reaction, even though that's already proven not to work, right? But you're going to keep learning through doing. And that is going to block that awakening that
Mm-hmm.
is really, and an awakening that's going to create a revolution, a transformational revolution within you that is really necessary for all of humanity, because your awakening awakens others, right? So you're a catalyst for the awakening of others. And so there's a need there to, because you see, the last step, the city, is rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like that caterpillar thing that, never gets old. You've got this caterpillar, and then it goes and it dissolves, it gets melted down, it basically stops being what it was. And then it is reborn into a completely different thing, which is a butterfly, not a caterpillar. And it does so, but it has to stop reacting and wasting its energy with the things that are happening around it, and really pull it in and use it for revolution, internal and external, for real transformation.
Okay. That's really speaking to me.
Okay.
I mean, in my life, I, obviously come from a very troubled childhood. I was with, my father in particular. All he did was react, and usually badly, and very
Mm-hmm.
huge outbursts of reaction. So I became habituated to living as a human being in exactly the same way. My 20s, I was an absolute monster, part of my 30s as well. But I really became aware of the fact that I was just constantly responding, reacting, and also um, blowing things out of proportion,
Right.
like really, really not being rational about what was happening in terms of the stimuli around me. And a lot of my personal work has been about swinging that pendulum of reaction all the way over to the other side. In fact, I did so much of that work where like I would not let myself react specifically badly, but it became like I wouldn't let myself react at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
now the pendulum is kind of swinging back to the center where I'm just being aware, oh, I'm feeling triggered inside right now. I'm not going to outwardly react to that, but I'm going to notice the reaction as it's happening, because that's telling me, as Mickey Singer said, that I've got a thorn somewhere. So it's all just an invitation to the work. But for me, this makes a lot of sense, the way
Oh,
that my life
absolutely.
was set up. And when I have mastered living intentionally and not in reaction, I experience my own personal revolution, and talk about a revolution of my purpose, a revolution of my perception,
Mm-hmm.
which I think I'm in a space of now. Well, that sounds like I'm not in the shadow. I'm still in the shadow of reaction. I'm still doing that work, but I can see how I'm doing both. I can
Yes.
see how I'm doing, and I can also sense what the rebirth feels like as well. So I'm just in the middle of that all. That's amazing.
It's amazing. That's exactly what it is. And it's and remember that 49 is married to 4. And because remember, those are programming partners. So if you
Yes.
look at your
Yes.
line, if and line 4 also has 3-line energy.
Yep.
So you see that? And
Mm-hmm.
so I hope that everybody can do this for themselves. Like if you have the Gene Keys book, just take your different gates, as we're doing with Crystal, and just start to explore, read to yourself, what is gate 23? What is the shadow? What is the gift? Can I see that somewhere in my life? Let me contemplate that. Now let me look at it through the perspective of line 1 energy. Let me come to that. What's the relationship or the push and pull between that 23 line and that 43 line? How's the 43 holding me back from expressing the 23? So it's a dance that we're doing
Mm-hmm.
with this information. And for example, for the 4th gene key it's called a universal panacea, but the shadow is intolerance. So if you have intolerance, for people, situation, and things, you're going to be in a reactivity mode. You're going to be overreacting to things because you're not really accepting what is showing up, what is present, what is. And how many of us are not in a permanent state of sort of, no, I don't tolerate that. I don't like that. That's not fair. That's not right. This isn't the way it should be. This is not the way it needs to be. Well, it is the way that it is. So, and the gift from intolerance, the gift that we can come out from intolerance is to understanding. And so you see how much this concept of understanding, communication, simplifying things, making
Yes.
them easier, it's a theme. It's a theme in your entire life. And radiance, gate 49, has to do all about with the physical body, with being healthy, with the aura, with, so that little sphere, radiance, has to do with our physical body and our physical health. So if we are in reaction to things, we are causing our body to be under a deep level of stress, cortisol, elevated blood pressure, all these, heart disease, all these things that are happening. So of course the body is going to suffer. It's going to suffer, and it will not be radiant. It'll be the opposite. We'll get cravings, we'll get addictions, we'll coping mechanisms. So here we are again looking at the same thing, because really this whole level of Gene Keys is really about the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
This is your embodied foundation, your body and your mind and your purpose. If that foundation is not stable, we cannot go into anything that involves more than just us. Like, how am I even going to begin to explore a healthy relationship if I'm not in balance, if I'm not authentic, if I'm not in integrity with my word and with myself? I can't. My whole relationships are going to struggle.
Right.
So that's why this is foundational. And that's why I tell people, don't try to run through the Gene Keys. I bet people like, well, I want to get it and I want to do the next. And I go, this is not about that. This is not a race. You're an immortal soul.
Right.
Take your time.
So this final one, which you called did you say universal panacea?
Yeah, universal panacea. And I find that, so basically it's the folly of youth is the beginning of this one, right? So they show the profound understanding of the low nature, right? So when we're young, we are so intolerant of people, things, situations. And then as we mature, and I remember my grandma always saying this to me, she's like, everything with you is so black and white when I was little, but life is shades of gray. One day you'll understand this. And now I do. That is true. And so we have all these, teenagers are like, you don't know, mom, that's wrong. This is right. And you're like, okay, just, give it 10 years, come back. We'll talk about it. So, and ultimately, the city of this Gene Key is forgiveness. Because when I can show understanding for myself and for others and for the situations that have happened, I can step into the gift of forgiveness. I can forgive myself. I can forgive others. I can forgive life or whatever I feel that I need to forgive. And not forgiveness in that shallow way of I forgive, but forgiveness as that peace that you get when you truly release. Because the thing that I did not mention to you about the water eye is that while the fire eye, you can connect with it, you can attach to it, you can be dragged by it. The water eye, you cannot access the water eye except through, excuse me, surrender. So the water eye, in order for you to step into that viewpoint, you have to just let go. You have to let go of your pushing, let go of your willing, let go. The same thing as we've been talking over and over again that Mickey Singer said.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so
I
I'm
was just
getting
thinking that.
audited, right? I'm getting audited. That's okay. It only opens to the one who yields. That's how he puts it.
Ooh,
Right?
yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
It only opens to the one that yields.
that yields. That's it. And so this mystery, if we come at it from this very yang, very masculine, which is what people have done. People have taken the I-ching, one of the holiest, most deepest mystery books, and they've turned it into like a game.
Right.
Oh, I'm gonna do, okay, I need to know if I need to play number 27 in the lotto. You know what I mean? Let me do the I-ching. No, this is mystical information. But
Mm-hmm.
that whole fire eye mentality of getting and having and doing has corrupted the knowledge of the I Ching, which is about patience and surrender and yielding and flow. And you will know when to act, but you will also know when not to act.
That reminds me of when we read the Kabbalion and they were talking about only like a select few are going to understand what we're really talking about, like the deeper levels of what we're talking about. The rest of them are going to try to become priests of it or create a religion out of it or to try and systemize the truth. And that's how you know it's getting bastardized.
Absolutely. And most things have.
Yeah,
We have,
for sure.
we know what's funny to me that everybody, the mystery schools were so worried that if the information in the mystery schools got out to the general population, that they would somehow misuse it and that it would be. I'm like, they don't even know what the hell you're saying, guys.
Right.
They don't, it's like it's like watching a cat, play with like advanced technology. And
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, and it maybe it's a sphere that can feed the world, but we think it's like something like a ball to play soccer with.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what it feels like to me has happened with the bulk of true mystery wisdom schools. It's all
Yeah.
there, but it's hidden in plain sight.
Yes, it is. I mean, I think it's human nature to try and understand and get to the bottom of and organize and
Yeah.
systemize. I think, but and that's what you have to resist, and instead just to be present with and be a
Mm-hmm.
receiver of. And that's kind of hard because we always want to do, we want to act, we want to be the fire eye, but we have to yield into the water eye. I think that's really amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so let me go back to the chart here on our video. Again, if you're listening, you can always wait until Monday and then watch us on video. So this is what my chart looked like when I put in my information, just to keep
Mm-hmm.
it super simple.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
start with genius. For me, it says, my deepest purpose in life is to manifest the gift of understanding. To realize my purpose, I need to transform the shadow of intolerance, which we have discussed. It
Mm-hmm.
has the same kind of a simplified breakdown for love and the same kind of simplified breakdown for prosperity. So if you're just
Mm-hmm.
looking to kind of very quickly understand what this says about you, you can look at that. But of course,
Mm-hmm.
as Elenique has said, this is really a deep journey of getting to know yourself in contemplation. Here
Yes.
we have the breakdown of my genius, which is what we just
Mm-hmm.
looked at, and I'm very genius.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
A plus.
I think we've established that if
A
there was
plus.
ever a genius in the room, it's me. I'm
Oh
joking.
yeah.
And so this kind of breaks it down. We've got a kind of a nice paragraph to discuss my life's work, my evolution, my radiance, and my purpose, which Elenique was kindly able to walk us through. And here's the chart or the profile that you can kind of follow along. And I'm wondering, um, so this is just my genius. When you pull your chart, is that all you get? Or how do I pull up my love descriptions in the chart? Do you know what I mean?
Well, this one here, I believe your free profile only
Yeah.
gives you
The genius.
the genius.
Okay.
Yeah, because it says that on the top, my genius. And then if you want more, you can always buy a more detailed one. There's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty big report that you can get with a whole bunch of a lot more information. And I think this is a great place to begin to explore yourself, in a very simplistic way, which is not simplistic, but it's a good place to start. But you can, of course, as we've seen today, this is just we can keep going and going and going and
Right.
never hit the end of it.
And what I'm thinking too, as I'm listening to you and as I'm reading some of this, is like I can use all of this as a meditation prompt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like just
Mm-hmm.
the idea of intolerance and or tolerance or understanding forgiveness. I can take that into a session with spirit and ask spirit to show me more, take me
Absolutely.
higher, take me deeper. And really,
Mm-hmm.
and I would probably want to have a journal and I would want to
Oh
write
yeah.
down some of the
Mm-hmm.
things that are coming through because I can just see this as like such a wellspring for personal
Yep.
understanding. Again, if you guys want to pull your own chart, you just have to go to genekeys.com. This part is free, but I'm probably interested in getting the more
Oh yeah.
in-depth version. So you would recommend that?
Absolutely. I mean, if this is really something that calls out to you, that especially you as a generator, that you have
Mm-hmm.
such a good sense of like within yourself, of what is right for you. But I felt that when I found Gene Keys in human design, I'm not a generator, but I felt this knowing that this is for me, right? Like this is definitely. And I love the contemplation path of Gene Keys.
Mm-hmm.
I love that it is contemplative, that it is always evolving, that it always meets us where we are. And like you said, you can just do something as simple as close your eyes and say, when I think about intolerance, what's coming up for me? And then really pay attention to the first things that are coming up because they're going to be telling you a lot and we dismiss them.
Mm-hmm.
It can be very small, just images, it can be a word, it can be a feeling. If it's a feeling, then you say, when have I felt this feeling before? When was the
Perfect.
first time I ever felt that feeling?
Right.
And trace it back because it's taking you back to a truth of where this was born. And so, very easily by ourselves, and honestly, that's what, like when you have someone facilitate for you, and especially how I do it, I try to weave it into hypnotherapy. So we do use it, but then I work with it on the unconscious or subconscious level, is to really take people to a very deep place where I can facilitate for them that exploration of themselves, because sometimes we don't want to do it on our own,
Mm-hmm.
or we'll come up with a million reasons not to do it. But if someone's guiding you, then you're like, okay, and you feel safe, then you're willing to see some things that might be hard to look at alone.
And so, if I'm a listener, and I've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, I'm going to probably want to check you out, to go to your website, to book a session with you where we can take this 2-hour journey looking at my gene keys. I mean, you
Yes.
said it takes 2 hours. So, how would
Yeah.
somebody connect with you and book with you in order to do that, Elenique?
Well, right now, I mean, I have on my website, eleniquemarie.com, but right now I am not doing anything until
What?
after May. No, so for May on, I took a couple months off because, as you know, I was struggling with all this
Mm-hmm.
fibromyalgia and stuff, and I'm trying to listen to the gene keys
Okay, good.
and follow my own gene keys, which is really about like holding space for myself. Because as a projector, um, I don't. I'm
Mm-hmm.
so outwardly focused on the people that I want to help and the things that I want to do that I forget that I'm a people that needs my help. you know?
You're the
So
first
I've been,
people.
yes, the
Yeah,
original people. So
right.
so yeah, so April I'm taking off as well, and then I'll hopefully be back and full of energy in May. So
But
but if
somebody,
anybody's interested, they could just write
they
to me.
can,
There's a yeah,
okay.
they can click on the link if that's what they want to do, and then I can schedule them for May.
Okay, well, we support you taking a break
Thank you.
because you are a projector
Yeah.
and you need to take that alone time, which is so precious to you. And I'm trying to remember from December what your lines were, and I'm not
Oh,
remembering because I don't remember.
six
But
two.
I was going to don't tell me. I
Oh
was going to
no.
say I know you're a 2. I
Oh
know
yeah.
there's some of that 2 in there, but
Oh my gosh.
I can also see the 6 for sure.
Yeah. I'm such a two. It's not even like sometimes I'm
Mm-hmm.
this is like where I work and where I meditate. I'm like my meditation pillow back there and I'm in there and I could spend hours by myself and just never be bored. And then, my husband would be like, don't you want to go out and do something? Don't you want to call your friends and go for lunch? And I'm like, not really.
And
Not
you have
really.
to make sure you make time to do that.
I
You
do.
have enough time every day to do that.
Hmm.
Um, I do have an email that came in. Do you want to get into it?
Yes.
That somebody sent to miraculousthinking, one word, at gmail.com. That's
Ooh, okay.
miraculousthinking at gmail.com. Okay, let me pull it up. Okay, this email comes in from Vanessa, and she says, "Hey, Crystal and Elenique, please forgive me. I meant to send this a couple of weeks ago. The Surrender Experiment book was amazing. I loved it so much that I went and bought The Untethered Soul, and I'm halfway through that one. And I still haven't purchased that. I need to get it. I want to do this too, Vanessa." She goes on to say that a couple of thoughts about thoughts. I completely understand relaxing into the observer position when you feel a disturbance. That part makes sense because when our body is regulated, we absolutely can make better decisions and become solution oriented, etc. I'm curious though about another aspect to our thoughts. I have a hard time separating myself from my thoughts because my thoughts are magic. I love
I
that.
love it.
I truly feel this, she says. When I intentionally use my thoughts, I can co create with spirit. I can manifest, I can heal, I can connect with others. I can do all kinds of stuff that doesn't come from quietness and that observer position. They are my thoughts. Even when I'm not intentionally using my thoughts, they are still interacting with the universe. I still end up manifesting things based on the chatter in my mind. I
Mm,
suppose, though, using thoughts is the observer me, using them as a tool rather than the thoughts themselves being me. What do you
mm-hmm.
think? What do you
Totally. I
think?
think that was brilliant. And it plays into what we were talking about today. Um, that you're describing sounds to me like riding the water with the fire underneath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you are from a high place of intuition and connection, manifesting into life the highest expression of your desires and your dreams, as opposed to thinking A, that you're doing it alone, or B, trying to will them into action through some externalized, like focused effort. This just is happening for you effortlessly. And therefore, your thoughts absolutely are magic. And I think that's amazing. I think that's great.
I do
What do
as
you think?
well. I think that we shouldn't mistake the silence for quiet.
Right.
Because I
That's true.
actually think when we're in the silence, that be still and know that I am God silence, it is a very dynamic
Mm,
landscape. And when we're in our imagination, that is a portal into the same space of this dynamic silence. I'd like to differentiate between the thoughts that you're thinking. I think the magic thoughts are different kinds of thoughts
mhm.
versus your ambient thinking. What am I going to make for dinner tonight? Do I have to put gas in the car? Those are
Right.
thoughts. We're talking about different kinds of thoughts. The thoughts that you're talking about that are magic and that are manifesting and that lead to healing and all of these other things, I feel like they're happening in that higher space, in the astral, through that portal that connects you to this really dynamic and creative silence of God. God is always moving, God is always dancing, God is always creating. And if we're to
Mhm.
know him in the silence, I really think that means know him in his space. And we get
Mhm.
there through silence by blocking off all the ambient thoughts and turning down the dials of that kind of noise in order to enter into his courts with praise, right? In this beautiful space of dynamic creation. So I think,
Yeah.
and I also think you probably know how to keep creating the way that you have been. So for you, it's probably about how do I create enough time every single day as a discipline and a practice to let my magic thoughts emerge, right?
Yes.
And create and
Love it.
manifest with your intention. But I love this water eye and the
Mm.
fire eye and the integration of that. Beautiful. Thank you,
Beautiful.
Vanessa, for writing
Thank
us.
you.
That was a wonderful email. And again, anybody who wants to reach
Yes.
out, we read all of the emails, that's for sure. Are there any final thoughts that you have for the Gene Keys? I haven't bought the books yet, but I need to do that. I really want to do that.
Just that the gene keys, for me, have been really transformational and continue to be. And again, what he said in the book, just the act of these things that you are reading are not just words, they are activations. So the act of reading
Mm,
about your shadow, about your gift, the act of focusing on your shadow while you contemplate how you want to step into your gift, just that is turning on certain codons in your DNA. It's activating your DNA. So this is an active process even when you're doing nothing. Again, going back to that contemplative nature of this book. So I find it a very sacred book. I find it a very powerful book. I feel the change in myself every time that I read it. And I understand myself more. I have like my hologenetic profile on my wall. Like I have it right in front of me. And I just look at it and I just let it, let those numbers come in passively, like angel numbers. Oh,
hmm
okay. That and just play with it, just allow it.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us about all of this. Because
Welcome.
pretty much when I approach a complicated system like this, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
astrology, numerology or human design, I get kind of overwhelmed by like all the lines and the numbers and the gateways. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, the planets and the earths and the moons, I can't deal. So having
Yeah.
somebody just kind of walk us through the foundation of it so that we can then continue that journey. Super appreciative. Thank you, thank you,
Oh,
thank you.
you're so welcome.
I also want to remind everybody, starting next week, we are going to be doing The Search for Truth
The Search for Truth.
by Michael A. Singer. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
go get the book and read it, we're just going to cover like the first week, we're going to talk about the first half of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Second week, we're going to talk about the second half of the book. We're not going to go like in detail chapter by chapter. We're just going to
Mm-hmm.
talk about our major takeaways. And then after that, again, we are going to be reading Illusions by Richard Bach, which is a pretty simple
Very
book,
simple.
but profound. And so if you haven't
Mm-hmm.
gotten that yet, get out and get it.
Go get it, girl.
All right, everybody. Until next time, stay safe, stay warm, and stay blessed. We love you.
Bye-bye.